That, my friends, is Grossberg's theme from Ace Attorney, also known as Age, Regret, Retribution. It's a great track that perfectly matches the character, Marvin Grossberg, as you learn more about him. It's also just really catchy in general. I also think that track perfectly describes the way I feel about his channel, despite his channel only being a year old. You see, it's been a while since I've uploaded on his channel, and the last time I did upload was when I did the first part of the Trump-Harris debate analysis, which I barely got out before Election Day. It didn't really matter though because Donald Trump proceeded to win the election, and I ended up changing nothing. But whatever, I thought. After that video, I went on to work on part 2 of the debate analysis. Yeah, it would come out after the election, but hey, maybe if I talked about at the end of each topic about how Donald Trump could improve, there'll still be a point. So I went on to work on that. For the next 2 months, I dedicated myself to working on this debate analysis, and things were going pretty well. At some point though, I couldn't go on. Today, I wanted to talk about that. I'll first show you what parts of the video I finished recording and editing, which was the intro, fracking, and almost all of the election segment. And I'll also briefly show the portions of the video I was in the middle of writing that never got to the recording and editing stages before I got burnt out. Before I'll talk about the whole experience, more about why I couldn't continue, and what I really want to do with this channel. First, let me show you the portion of the debate analysis that I actually ended up finishing. Listen, I know this video is late, but I believe this video can still serve a purpose. Yes, Trump won, but as you'll be going through the debate, he has a lot of issues. So here's what I'm going to do. I'll go on with the mega analysis. However, at the end of each major topic, I will briefly talk about what Trump can do to do a better job this term. Listen, he's going to be our president for the next 4 years, and I want him to do a good job. Anyways, let's start off with fracking.
Vice President Harris, in your last run for president, you said you wanted to ban fracking. Now you don't. You wanted mandatory government buyback programs for assault weapons. Now your campaign says you don't. You supported decriminalizing border crossings. Now you're taking a harder line. I know you say that your values have not changed. So then why have so many of your policy positions changed?
You call this a rigged debate against Trump? This is such a tough question against Kamala Harris, which would have never come up if this debate was being rigged in favor of her. But they don't fact-check Kamala Harris on stuff like Trump following Project 2025. I already mentioned this in part 1, but I'll say it again. There were plenty of times where Trump lied about Kamala Harris that wasn't fact-checked, such as his claims about her and her father being Marxist. But it's true, you might say. Well, it's true Trump's plan aligns very well with Project 2025. So please. But there's a reason why Harris and Trump aren't being fact-checked for this sort of stuff. The moderators were only fact-checking on general claims of the country, such as babies being killed after birth in blue states and Haiti people eating cats and dogs. They were not fact-checking claims about each other. The moderators were harsh on both candidates, as they should have been, seeing how this is an election over the most powerful position in the most powerful country in the world. However, I still understand how MAGA thinks the debate is rigged. After all, Kamala Harris actually answers these tough questions pretty well, unlike Trump, who has to result in crying about a debate being rigged and to repost quotes by his other supporters who are essentially memeing him. The charges are rigged, the prosecution's presentation of the case was rigged, the judge's management of the case was rigged, the gag order was rigged, the instructions to the jury were rigged, the whole thing was rigged from beginning to end, in hopes of, to the extent this case and the guilty verdict will matter in November, rigged the presidential election. Is anyone going to tell Trump that this sort of stuff really makes him look childish? Look, check this out. He went on a rant about how everything is rigged against me. So true. So true. Anyways, let's hear Kamala Harris' response.
So my values have not changed, and I'm going to discuss at least every point that you've made.
Unfortunately, Kamala Harris only gets enough time to talk about fracking and values. However, Trump doesn't bother getting into assault weapons and border crossings, and focuses on fracking, so it doesn't matter anyways.
But in particular, let's talk about fracking because we're here in Pennsylvania. I made that very clear in 2020. I will not ban fracking. I have not banned fracking as Vice President of the United States, and in fact, I was the tie-breaking vote on the Inflation Reduction Act, which opened new leases for fracking. My position is that we have got to invest in diverse sources of energy so we reduce our reliance on foreign oil. We have had the largest increase in domestic oil production in history because of an approach that recognizes that we cannot over-rely on foreign oil.
Kamala Harris has been a good fighter against climate change, and we'll get into that towards the end of the video when we talk about climate change in general. However, Kamala Harris also understands that we still need fossil fuels right now for our energy. That's why she's focusing on how we get the current oil we need, and that's why she's pushing for us to get our oil here cheaply, and US consumers getting their oil from US businesses and supporting our economy, instead of getting our oil from other countries that have far different interests than us.
As it relates to my values, let me tell you, I grew up a middle-class kid raised by a hardworking mother who worked and saved and was able to buy our first home when I was a teenager. The values I bring to the importance of home ownership, knowing not everybody got handed $400 million on a silver platter and then filed bankruptcy 6 times, is a value that I bring to my work to say we are going to work with the private sector and home builders to increase by 3 million homes by the end of my first term.
Since the reason why Kamala Harris is supporting fracking is economically related, we're sort of getting back to that area. And Kamala Harris is going back to that point about how one of the goals for her presidency is to lift up the middle class, and how her personal experiences had developed those goals to lift that group of people. Now, I know the House part may sound ridiculous and needs elaboration, but Kamala Harris doesn't have to, because she's just using this as a point about her values. If this is something that should have been challenged, Trump would have challenged that point, but doesn't. Instead, Donald Trump challenges the ridiculous amount of money he started off with, but we'll get into that later.
My work that is related to having a friend when I was in high school who was sexually assaulted by her stepfather. And my focus then on protecting women and children from violent crime is based on a value that is deeply grounded in the importance of standing up for those who are most vulnerable. My work that is about protecting Social Security and Medicare is based on long-standing work that I have done, protecting seniors from scams. My values have not changed. And what is important is that there is a president who actually brings values and a perspective that is about lifting people up and not beating people down and name-calling. The true measure of the leader is the leader who actually understands the strength is not in beating people down, it's in lifting people up. I intend to be that president.
Now we're getting into Kamala Harris's personal experiences, which helped shape her views. In fact, she also mentioned her personal experiences as a child during the very first round of this debate, and how that shaped her views. And I think it's pretty nice to hear a presidential candidate talk about those good and bad things they have seen in their life and use that to build policies to help bring our country forward. It also is really nice to understand how a politician got to the point they are with their ideology, with their positions, with their life, coming from their own mouth. I even talked about this a bit towards the end of the Vivek Ramaswamy response, where despite all my frustrations with him, I was able to see him as a human being. I was able to see him as an honest human being because I understood how he developed those views. Regarding the economy, yes, there are going to be a lot of taxes for richer people, but you can understand why she believes this is worth it, because she grew up in a middle-class family and can relate to those people and their troubles. Regarding reproductive rights, yes, abortion is sad, but you can understand why she believes this is worth it, because she has met many women who really needed that abortion. When it comes to Trump, it's different. The reason why he is so nice to rich people when it comes to taxes is because he is a rich person, and those tax breaks benefit him too. The reason why he is just straight up unclear on his abortion stance is because he wants both the pro-state and pro-life votes. And like Harris mentioned, she actually intends to lift people up, whereas Trump just wants to name call and bring people down. I actually could believe Kamala Harris will be a good leader. I can't say the same about Trump. Anyways, let's see what Trump has to say.
Well, first of all, I wasn't given $400 million. I wish I was. My father was a Brooklyn builder, Brooklyn, Queens, and a great father, and I learned a lot from him. But I was given a fraction of that, a tiny fraction, and I built it into many, many billions of dollars, many, many billions. And when people see it, they are even surprised.
You might have been a successful businessman, but I wouldn't exactly call you a legitimate businessman, considering how earlier this year a New York court ruled that you have been fraudulently misrepresenting your financial figures to get loans and other benefits. In fact, I don't think a lot of shareholders and investors consider you a successful businessman for how you've gone bankrupt so many times and how you ruined their investment in you.
So we don't have to talk about that. Fracking? She's been against it for 12 years.
I'm against fracking too, but I also know that right now we need fracking for our energy. Yes, I do hope that we transition to cleaner sources pretty soon, but until then, we're going to need fracking.
Defund the police. She's been against that forever.
Ah, yes. Prosecutor who got elected to district attorney, who later even got elected to attorney general, is really interested in defunding the organization she directly worked with to put away criminals.
She gave all that stuff up very wrongly, very horribly, and everybody's laughing at it, okay? They're all laughing at it. She gave up at least 12 and probably 14 or 15 different policies. Like, she was big on defund the police.
You know what? Since Trump is so insistent, let's dive into this misconception. You see, when you search up Kamala Harris defund police, you're going to get results from when Kamala Harris praised protest asking for police reform back in 2020. However, Harris was not saying that the police need to be completely defunded, and was rather saying that this movement is rightfully calling out the budget police departments have compared to the budgets of social services. You know, she's talking about budgets, the thing you're planning on starting a department on called Doggy. No, not Cat and Doggy, the animated series I used to do on Dude, but Doggy, the Department of Government Efficiency, led by Vivek Ramaswamy and Elon Musk, because, you know, Trump needed to give them a promotion for all the promotion they've been giving Trump. So he hired Ramaswamy to run the department, the same guy who said the Constitution made us win the Revolutionary War, to work alongside Elon. Let's make the verification thing on Twitter, sorry, I mean X, something you pay for exclusive status instead of a way to confirm you're the real person if you're a big person who people try to impersonate. Musk. Anyways, Kamala Harris still supports the police overall. It's just that she doesn't believe they need that much of a proportion of the budget. By the way, it would be really nice if you tell us what policies you believe she gave up so that we could possibly get Harris' response to that.
She went out in Minnesota and wanted to let criminals that killed people, that burned down Minneapolis, she went out and raised money to get them out of jail. She did things that nobody would ever think of.
I believe you're talking about the Minnesota Freedom Fund, which Kamala Harris did indeed support, because that is about bails, which just makes it so they aren't stuck in a cell until their trial. Harris probably supports bails because she's a prosecutor and knows how long it takes before a trial begins, and that it's kind of stupid that a lot of people being detained are being charged for crimes that people like Trump get away with, and that they haven't even gotten a trial, yet are being confined just because they aren't a major presidential candidate.
Hold up, Sharia.
What is it?
These trials are politicized, and they existed purely to make me look bad compared to my political opponent.
If you don't like how crimes you're being convicted for make you look bad, then you should just not do it.
But I'm a changed person.
Then tell the American people you're a changed person.
But then I have to admit that I did do those crimes.
If you believe it's something in the past, and that's why you aren't that bad, then what's wrong with admitting they happened?
You want me to admit that I had a sex affair with a porn star while I was married?
If you are a changed person, and that's why you aren't that bad, then it shouldn't be a problem to admit those things.
But I don't want to admit all of this.
Listen, I can't help you otherwise.
Yes, you can help me.
By doing what?
By explaining to everyone how I deserve to be excused for all of these crimes, because I will soon be president again and it'll get in the way of democracy.
It doesn't matter how high ranking you are. Nobody is above the law. Otherwise, There's no rule of law.
You know, that's what the judge from part 1 was saying.
Before he got killed by you, morbing him alive.
Shut up! It was rigged against me!
The point is, a certain real-life judge, the one in charge of the hush money trial, pushed Trump's conviction after the election just so the conviction doesn't get in the way of his campaigning for election. How is that rigged against Trump?
Because the judge ruled Trump did all of these felonies in the first place. Trump was a presidential candidate and shouldn't have gotten the guilty verdict.
Listen, what is rule of life? Whoa, whoa, whoa!
Keep going with the video, but you'll have no words for the rest of Trump's intellectual language.
Okay, I was doing a video, but then you...
Shut up! Or get shut down!
Okay.
Now she wants to do transgender operations on illegal aliens that are in prison.
I see why people find his rallies so entertaining.
Nice. You're saying good things about my real-life counterpart. I am proud of you.
Seeing a 70-year-old man spring on the most random shit the Onion can use is certainly entertaining. Of course, I don't think that 70-year-old man would like the Onion getting ideas from him, considering how he was crediting his student for libel in the past. Over an article under the title of, guess this, when you're feeling low, just remember I'll be dead in about 15 or 20 years. Oh,
This is a radical left liberal that would do this.
Speaking of the radical left, my left arm no longer exists. It turns out that guy left, haha, just to get an axe, because I guess he didn't find a gun to be enough. I would like to go after him, but that guy basically has immunity now that he's president. This is left, right? But anyways, now we know how Trump got his idea. I need a transition from my misunderstanding of how bails work. That's something only radical leftists would do. Something about transgenderism. Transgender operation. Now she wants to do transgender operations. No what? Illegal immigrants. No. Illegal aliens. Yeah, illegal aliens that are in prison. That makes sense. Yeah. That makes sense.
She wants to confiscate your guns, and she will never allow fracking in Pennsylvania. If she won the election, fracking in Pennsylvania will end on day 1.
Again, you're confusing stuff. Kamala Harris wants to transition from fossil fuels to clean energy. The key word being transition. She doesn't want to end it immediately. No, she wants to focus a lot on clean energy so that they can lean off the fossil fuel industry slowly. But she would not ban fracking because she knows we need it right now. However, unlike you, she also knows we also need clean energy because we can't keep using fossil fuels. So she's actually interested in developing clean energy quickly. Are there going to be laws restricting the amount of damage you can do to the planet? Yes, and for good reason. Because, we should be protecting our planet. But there won't be laws straight up banning fracking on day 1.
Just to finish, one thing so important in my opinion. So I got the oil business going like nobody has ever done before.
I got the oil business going like nobody has ever done before. I don't think that's something you should be bragging about. Yes, Kamala Harris is proud of how she's opened up new leases for fracking because she knows we need it right now. But that's not getting the oil business going like nobody's ever done before. It's still a harmful industry. It's just that we still need it.
When they took over, they got rid of it, started getting rid of it, and the prices were going up the roof. They immediately let these guys go to where they were. I would have been 5 times, 4 times, 5 times higher because you're talking about 3.5 years ago.
I would have been 5 times, 4 times, 5 times higher. What do you mean by you would have been higher? The prices would have been 4 or 5 times higher? Because the last unit you mentioned were prices. So I'm assuming that's it, but that doesn't make sense. And where were these guys before? Again, I'm being absolutely genuine here. Can somebody explain to me what Trump is trying to say? Because I don't understand a single thing he's saying.
They got it up to where I was because they had no choice, because the prices of energy were quadrupling and doubling. You saw what happened to gasoline. So they said, let's go back to Trump.
So are you saying the prices of energy were much higher and then you made it a lot lower? So now we know you're talking about prices. So what do you mean by, I would have been 5 times, 4 times, 5 times higher? And who's they? Again, I don't understand what Trump is saying. He's just not that good with words.
They wanted steel and concrete, which makes sense. It's steel, it's concrete.
Oh shit!
But if she won the election, the day after that election, they'll go back to destroying our country, and oil will be dead, fossil fuel will be dead.
That itself isn't bad. We want oil and fossil fuel to end eventually. It's just that we need it right now. Kamala Harris knows both of that, and that's why she is supporting new leases on fracking while also pushing for clean energy.
We'll go back to windmills, and we'll go back to solar, where they need a whole desert to get some energy to come out. You ever see a solar plant? By the way, I'm a big fan of solar, but they take 400, 500 acres of desert
President
soil.
Trump, we have a
These
lot
are
of
not good
issues
things
that
for
we
the
have to get
environment,
to.
as
We're
she
out of time.
understands.
Thank you.
Trump actually has a good point right now, which is that solar panels do end up taking up a lot of the desert. Watch Planet of the Humans by Jeff Gibbs for more information about the flaws of our clean energy sources. But perhaps we can get further developments on green energy if people realize global warming exists and through human influence. Your tweets about global warming being a hoax aren't exactly helping Trump. Anyways, now that the topic is over, what can Trump do to do a better job? Well, I'm confident that he would allow local fracking. What I'm not confident about is the control. Because if we start drilling oil without any control, then that is going to end up harming our planet a lot. Trump, your generation may not be there when the planet becomes hell, but your legacy will be there. Listen, Trump, I know you're not going to apologize for all the false statements you said about climate change being a hoax, but if you could just put up a speech talking about how we need to develop better sources of energy and become independent, that would be awesome. A lot of the Republican Party still doesn't believe climate change is a big deal, but you could become a leader on this issue, Trump, and end up saving this planet. You would leave behind an awesome legacy that historians would keep talking about many years afterwards.
Lindsay, thank you. We have an election in just 56 days. And I want to talk about the peaceful transfer of power, which, of course, we all know is a cornerstone of our democracy, and the role of a president in a moment of crisis. Mr. President, on January 6th, you told your supporters to march to the Capitol. You said you would be right there with them. The country and the world saw what played out at the Capitol that day, the officers coming under attack. Aides in the West Wing say you watched it unfold on television off the Oval Office. You did send out tweets, but it was more than 2 hours before you sent out that video message telling your supporters to go home. Is there anything you regret about what you did on that day?
This is a legitimate question. If we could get more information about why Trump did the things he did that day, and whether the fault was really his, then maybe we could trust him to be our president again. After all, it's really discouraging if a presidential candidate had put our democracy in danger for their own gain. This is Trump's chance to restore faith in the American people. But by the end of the round, Trump does not do that at all.
You just said a thing that isn't covered. Peacefully and patriotically, I said during my speech, not later on. Peacefully and patriotically.
Maybe you did say that, but you also sent out a tweet at the same time the riots were happening, telling your supporters, Mike Pence didn't have the courage to do what should have been done to protect our country and our Constitution, giving states a chance to certify a corrected set of facts, not the fraudulent or inaccurate ones, which they were asked to previously certify. USA demands the truth. MAGA keeps trying to ignore it, but those protesters were not being peaceful. They were literally storming the insides of the Capitol building, and our officers were barely able to hold them off. Our people in Congress were in actual danger, and Mike Pence especially was in danger, getting threats by the people who once loved him to get hanged because they were upset Mike Pence was certifying the official results. It's messed up. In fact, I think Trump is basically admitting that January 6th was a disaster. Let me replay that.
You just said a thing that isn't covered. Peacefully and patriotically, I said during my speech, not later on. Peacefully and patriotically.
The fact that he's clarifying that he told his supporters to go peacefully and patriotically suggests that his supporters didn't actually go peacefully and patriotically. If his supporters were being peaceful patriots, then Trump would be saying that his supporters were being peaceful patriots. But he doesn't. And he says that he said that they should go peacefully and patriotically. It seems like he's trying to defend himself by saying that he had a different plan of what was supposed to happen on January 6th. He isn't defending his followers by saying that they were marching peacefully and patriotically, because he knows that pretty much every undecided voter knows that that is false. Instead, he lies about something else that a lot of undecided voters don't actually know about.
And nobody on the other side was killed. Ashley Babbitt was shot by an out-of-control police officer that should have never, ever shot her. It's a disgrace. But we didn't do this group of people that have been treated so badly.
First of all, one of our police officers died after being assaulted by a rioter. It would have been much worse if it weren't for, oh yeah, because everyone the rioters were targeting got evacuated to safer spots. If it weren't for the fact that our people in Congress have a lot of security, we would have seen a lot of casualties. But since nothing bad ended up happening, hey, I guess it wasn't bad at all. Just a bunch of tourists, am I right? Just like the guy who attempted to assassinate Trump. Trump was never killed. It's completely fine. He was just exercising his Second Amendment rights, am I right? Now, since the alt-right are snowflakes, let me just clarify, I'm being sarcastic. The guy who tried to assassinate Trump was doing something bad, and was doing more than exercising his Second Amendment rights. Just like how all those rioters were doing something bad, and were doing more than being tourists.
You know, if you didn't know the TV footage was a video from January the 6th, you would actually think it was a normal tourist visit.
I ask, what about all the people that are pouring into our country and killing people that she allowed to pour in?
We just had an entire section on immigration and voter security. Why didn't you talk about this then? Oh, right, because your rallies are more important for you. Makes sense. But damn, you're so desperate to change the topic from this horrible day that you decided to prove Kamala Harris right from part 1. During the actual immigration segment.
And I'll tell you something, he's going to talk about immigration a lot tonight, even when it's not the subject that is being raised.
Yeah, I think Trump has gotten really desperate.
She was the border czar, remember that. She was the border czar. She doesn't want to be called the border czar because she's embarrassed by the border. In fact, she said at the beginning, well, I'm surprised you're not talking about the border yet. That's because she knows what a bad job they've done.
Maybe they could have done a better job if that bill to put more border agents passed. But what happened again? Oh, right. You and MAGA couldn't afford for their border issue to get better because illegal immigration is a major issue you've been running on. But if the illegal immigration problem gets better, then you have one less major issue to run on. Now, I already talked a lot about this in part 1, but Trump keeps bringing it up, nonetheless, even after the illegal immigration section, which only ended about 10 minutes ago for him.
What about those people? When are they going to be prosecuted? When are these people from countries all over the world, not just South America? They're coming in from all over the world, David, all over the world. And crime rates are down all over the world because of it.
In part 1, during the actual immigration section, we already talked about how crime rates in the United States have been going down since the 90s, and that there's no negative correlation between US crime rates and crime rates around the world. We also talked about, in part 1, how really the crimes unique to the United States all boil down to guns. Remember, in part 1, during the actual immigration section,
But let me
But
just
when
ask
are those, David, when are those people going to be prosecuted? When are the people that burned down Minneapolis going to be prosecuted? Or in Seattle, they went into Seattle, they took over a big percentage of the city of Seattle. When are those people going to be prosecuted?
I want to focus on Minneapolis for a little bit. I find it very ironic that the same people who were crying about the January 6th rioters being taken down too harshly are crying about the BLM rioters not being taken down harshly enough. Our literal capital was being besieged during election certification. Our own vice president's life was in danger, largely because of Trump's encouragement. One of our police officers died after being assaulted by a rioter. Both the BLM and January 6th rioters were doing bad things, and they both needed to be taken down. Those January 6th rioters do not deserve pardoning, Trump, and for the way you incited it, you even sending out tweets about how Mike Pence is being independent and securing false results against you while they were rioting. As you were in the White House, you knew what was going on, and you made it worse anyways, because that's how desperate you were to win.
But let me just ask
You might ask her that question.
You were the president. You were watching it unfold on television. It's a very simple question as we move forward toward another election. Is there anything you regret about what you did on that day?
David Murr asked this question at the beginning of this round, and this was Trump's chance to come clean. Instead, as you'll see throughout this topic, Trump has no guilt over this, because he really did want those election results to never get certified, and for him to stay president. He will not come out clean, because in the end, he's just another, and worse, Nixon.
Yes, sir.
I had nothing to do with that other than they asked me to make a speech. I showed up for a speech. I said, I think it's going to be big. I went to Nancy Pelosi and the mayor of Washington, D.C., and the mayor put it back in writing, as you know. I said, this is going to be a very big rally or whatever you want to call it. And again, it wasn't done by me. It was done by others. I said, I'd like to give you 10,000 National Guard or soldiers. They rejected me. Nancy Pelosi rejected me.
I'll take Trump's word for this, but it's still a weird story. 10,000 National Guard to just protect him? What are you expecting out of this rally? And why were you calling it a rally when the election was over? Isn't the whole point of a rally to get your fans energized? But there's nothing to get them energized for. Unless you had the intent of energizing them, just as a way to stand in the way of democracy and make yourself win. It's a weird story of yours, and it makes one wonder how you would be predicting all of these riots will happen and why you went on with the speech anyways if that is what you thought was going to happen.
It was just 2 weeks ago. Her daughter has a tape of her saying she is fully responsible for what happened. They want to get rid of that tape. It would have never happened if Nancy Pelosi and the mayor of Washington did their jobs. I wasn't responsible for security. Nancy Pelosi was responsible. She didn't do her job.
Trump, thank you for telling us that Nancy Pelosi has something called a guilty conscience and a desire to be a better person and to do a better job, unlike you. But we aren't here to talk about Nancy Pelosi right now. We are here to talk about you. And whether you believe there was something you could have done that day that would have helped. Because even if there was more security, you guys would still be snowflakes and cry about how the January 6th rioters were being treated too harshly. Because remember, they would have rioted anyways, and the security would just be pushing them off. It's just that our democracy wouldn't have been that close to being destroyed. Anyways, I want to hear what Trump said again.
It would have never happened if Nancy Pelosi and the mayor of Washington did their jobs.
Trump admitting the January 6th rioters were doing bad stuff again? But this time, it's so he can blame it on Nancy Pelosi? Trump has always been super inconsistent, but at least MAGA can't say the January 6th rioters were innocent, because Trump already admitted the January 6th rioters were a danger to security. Yes, it's so he can redirect the blame, but at least he confessed the rioters were guilty.
I was at the Capitol on January 6th. I was the vice president-elect. I was also an acting senator. I was there. And on that day, the President of the United States incited a violent mob to attack our nation's capital, to desecrate our nation's capital. On that day, 140 law enforcement officers were injured, and some died. And understand, the former president has been indicted and impeached for exactly that reason.
That impeachment also successfully went through the House. But unfortunately, the Republican Senate, being the Republican Senate, didn't give a crap about how our democracy was threatened and how one of their own, Mike Pence, was threatened, alongside their Democratic fellows from Congress. Because hey, Trump is the more popular kid. Maybe he'll make me more popular too if I keep kissing his feet. Maybe he'll make me his vice president pick too. Oh wait, I'm not white. He was never going to choose me.
But this is not an isolated situation. Let's remember Charlottesville, where there was a mob of people carrying tiki torches, spewing anti-Semitic hate. And what did the president then at the time say? There were fine people on each side.
This is another criticism conservatives have against Kamala Harris regarding the debate. According to them, this has been debunked many times. However, the part that was debunked was about if Trump said that the neo-Nazis were fine people, because he never actually said that. The part where Trump said there were fine people on both sides was true, because that was what he said. He just believes that there are some good people even on the neo-Nazi side. In that same way, Kamala Harris is not saying that Trump said that the neo-Nazis were fine. Kamala Harris is criticizing him for saying that there were good people on both sides, which makes sense because he did say that. Kamala Harris is not criticizing Trump for something he didn't say. In that same manner, you should stop criticizing Kamala Harris for something she did not say.
Let's remember that when it came to the Proud Boys, a militia, the former president said, stand back and stand by.
For those of you who don't know, the Proud Boys are a far-right militia that Trump referenced in the September 2020 debate against Joe Biden. The reference drew more attention to the Proud Boys, and finally, on January 6th, the Proud Boys helped launch the attack on the Capitol to reject Biden's victory. The fact that Trump knew about the Proud Boys and he didn't bother to condemn them is very interesting, because the way he said that remark makes it look like the Proud Boys would listen to him, and it makes you want to wonder why he didn't do anything to disband an extreme group that would listen to him.
So for everyone watching who remembers what January 6th was, I say we don't have to go back. Let's not go back. We're not going back. It's time to turn the page. And if that was a bridge too far for you, well, there is a place in our campaign for you to stand for country, to stand for our democracy, to stand for rule of law, and to end the chaos, and to end the approach that is about attacking the foundations of our democracy because you don't like the outcome. And be clear on that point. Donald Trump, the candidate, has said in this election there will be a bloodbath if this and the outcome of this election is not to his liking. Let's turn the page on this. Let's not go back. Let's chart a course for the future and not go backwards to the past.
I agree with Kamala Harris. It's time we move forward. It's time we progress. It's time to bring this country together and to advance our democracy rather than destroying it. Kamala Harris is no perfect person, but she will not put our democracy in danger. Trump has had no respect for the law, and despite part one talking a lot about it, I was just covering the tip of the iceberg.
Let me just follow up here.
It was a different term, and it was a term that related to energy because they have destroyed our energy business. That was where bloodbath was.
Ah, yes. Encouraging green energy over just using fossil fuels. We're going to get a bloodbath out of a cleaner planet with more sustainable energy. Meanwhile, the pollution we've been emitting that has been killing millions around the world is fine. Those people's lives don't matter. My oil investments matter more than them.
Also, on Charlottesville, that story has been, as you would say, debunked. Laura Ingraham, Sean Hannity, Jesse, all of these people, they covered it. If they go an extra sentence, they will see it was perfect. It was debunked in almost every newspaper.
Again, the part you're talking about that was debunked was the part that Harris didn't even mention. She's just talking about the part you did actually say.
But they still bring it up, just like they bring 2025 up. They bring all of this stuff up.
Yes, the Democratic Party does talk a lot about your past, but they also focus on something called the future. You know, because this is a presidential race over who would be the best for the future. During the economy section, all you were talking about was how awesome you were in your last term rather than talking about how you would be awesome this term. During the abortion section, you couldn't even bring yourself to say you would veto a national abortion ban. And during the immigration section, wait, that's right, there was an immigration section. An immigration section that just concluded 10 minutes ago in real time for Trump.
I ask you this, you talk about the Capitol. Why are we allowing these millions of people to come through on the southern border?
If it weren't for the fact that this video is a recorded one and not a live one, I would actually be asking you, guys, do you want me to skip this part where Trump actively avoids talking about January 6th? Because, oh my goodness, we just talked about immigration.
How come she's not doing anything? And I'll tell you what I would do, and I would be very proud to do it. I would say we would both leave this debate right now. I'd like to see her go down to Washington, D.C. during this debate because we're wasting a lot of time. Go down to, because she's been so bad, it's so ridiculous. Go down to Washington, D.C. and let her sign a bill to close up the border.
We're wasting a lot of time. Who the heck is the one who's wasting everyone's time but bringing up immigration after the immigration segment ended? The topic are the Capitol riots. So why don't you give voters information about that? Listen, I'm actually being serious here. A lot of Americans still believe you were at fault for those riots. And this section was actually your chance to show those Americans, no, those riots were the work of crazy people who would have done it anyways, no matter what I would have said. Or maybe you are guilty for those riots. Why don't you show that guilt? Don't know about the rest of you guys, but I like a modest leader. I like a leader who isn't full of himself. I like a leader who can say sorry and can own up. I mean, just look at your own political party. Richard Nixon and Ronald Reagan were both presidents who had a lot of popularity for the time and won elections in a landslide. But today, Richard Nixon has one of the worst reputations, and that's thanks to the Watergate scandal. But did you know Ronald Reagan also had a scandal? It was something about Iran that I myself barely have knowledge about. And I doubt a lot of you guys have knowledge on it either. But almost all of us know about Watergate. Do you know why? Because Reagan actually owned up to a scandal and actually apologized. Unlike Nixon, whose dishonesty led to rules like the Presidential Records Act. Just apologize and own up, Trump, and things will be a lot better.
Because they have the right to do it. They don't need bills. They have the right to do it.
Just like how you have the right to peacefully concede, which you didn't. Speaking of which, I might as well bring this up. Kamala Harris peacefully conceded as soon as she realized she lost. Even before they finished counting, and it was just clear you won because you had the 270 electoral votes, Harris peacefully surrendered. She was able to do something you couldn't do. I mean, if she wanted, she could have called the election rigged like you did and do a bunch of drama over it. But she didn't because she's much better than that.
President of the United States, you'll get him out of bed, you'll wake him up at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, right. You'll say, come on down to the office, let's sign a bill. If he signs a bill that the border is closed, all he has to do is say it to the Border Patrol, who are phenomenal. If they do that, the border is closed.
Speaking of the Border Patrol, they did try to increase the Border Patrol force, but you rejected it. I wonder why. Oh, right. Because you wouldn't be able to run on that issue anymore.
Mr. Those people are killing many people, unlike J6.
One of our police officers were killed by the rioters. Some committed suicide after having to go through what they did, and our congressman and vice president were in huge danger. Our police officers were in danger, our congressmen were in danger, our vice president was in danger, our democracy was in danger, and you and the rest of MAGA did not care.
We talked immigration here tonight.
Exactly!
Exactly! This section is about elections, and it's your chance to come clean. But no, because you are so busy talking about your rallies during the actual immigration part, you're bringing up immigration now. Now, I can't find the clip anymore, but Ben Shapiro, you call Kamala Harris a nothing burger? Trump has essentially said nothing throughout the economy and abortion parts, and clearly he didn't say much during the immigration part, as he is constantly bringing it up after it ended.
And I do want to focus on this next issue to both of you because it really brings us this into focus, truth in these times that we're living in. Mr. President, for 3.5 years after you lost the 2020 election, you repeatedly falsely claimed that you won, many times saying you won in a landslide. In the past couple of weeks leading up to this debate, you have said, quote, you lost by a whisker, that you, quote, didn't quite make it, that you came up a little bit short.
I said that?
Are you now acknowledging that you lost in 2020?
No, I don't acknowledge that at all.
The American people, you voted for a person who for 4 years couldn't bring himself to say he lost under the excuse that it was all rigged. If you can't even be a good loser, how are you going to be a good winner?
I
You
said
did
that
say
sarcastically,
that.
you know that. It was said, oh, we lost by a whisker. That was said sarcastically. Look, there's so much proof. All you have to do is look at it. And they should have sent it back to the legislatures for approval. I got almost 75 million votes, the most votes any sitting president has ever gotten. I was told if I got 63, which was what I got in 2016, you can't be beaten. The election, people should never be thinking about an election as fraudulent. We need two things. We need walls, and we have to have it. We have to have borders, and we have to have good elections.
Oh my gosh, I wonder what changed between this election and elections before. All right, the population increased. Okay, fine. It's not just the population, because the number of voters in the 2024 election was less than the 2020 election. And let me tell you why. Mail-in ballots. Everything was at home, so guess what? Voters did their voting at home. And since this was becoming so popular, a lot of other people who usually aren't able to do their voting on election day decided to hop on and do their voting. And this goes to both sides, hence why there were so many votes this election. Biden was fairly popular, so yeah, he won the election against Trump. Now, as for 2024, well, when Jill Stein, a presidential candidate who have ran in 3 elections, doesn't even know the amount of representatives there are in the House, well, it's safe to assume that a lot of ordinary, less politically active people didn't realize they can do their votes from home again, as voting in person rose back to popularity again. But anyways, let's talk about Trump's proof that the election was rigged. You're talking about all this proof of yours when all 62 of your lawsuits failed in various courts. Listen, I already talked about this in part 1, but I will say this again. If the media hates you, if the legal system hates you, if the voting process hates you, then how do you expect the majority of the people to like you? These systems consist of the people. These systems represent the people. And if these systems don't like you, chances are the people don't like you. You are even going as far as to say that the majority of California likes you. And I'm sorry, either these systems and the people like you, or the systems and the people dislike you. You can't have it both ways.
Our elections are bad. And a lot of these illegal immigrants coming in, they're trying to get them to vote. They can't even speak English. They don't even know what country they're in practically. And these people are trying to get them to vote. And that's why they're allowing them to come into our country.
Ah, yes. These people who can't speak English somehow talk to the volunteers, sell themselves as someone who passed the English and civics test because, you know, those are the basic requirements to become a citizen. And then they go through voting and know exactly who they want to vote for in a country they don't even know. Makes perfect sense. By the way, if Trump is really going to talk about all of his ridiculous conspiracy theories about our elections, I might as well bring up Trump's first impeachment trial, where he broke international law and withheld foreign aid to Ukraine so that they would launch an investigation into Joe Biden. I agree, the 2020 election was unfair. It was unfair for Joe Biden. Listen, if you care so much about our elections, Trump, how about you stop breaking international law to give yourself an advantage and stop encouraging your followers to try to overturn them? Gosh, you're the only US president to have had 2 impeachments in history, and they both happened in one term too, and both of these impeachments were over your interference in our elections? These elections are unfair not because of these huge amounts of illegal immigrants who can't speak English voting against you, but because of you.
I did watch all of these pieces of video. I didn't detect the sarcasm, lost by a whisker. We didn't quite make it. And we should just point out here as clarification, and you know this, you and your allies, 60 cases in front of many judges, many of them
No
Republican.
judge looked at it.
And said
They
there was
said
no
we didn't have
widespread fraud.
standing.
All the judges that look at my cases are incompetent. In the meanwhile, any judge who remotely shakes their head in disapproval at Biden must be an absolute genius who would never be wrong.
That's the other thing. They said we didn't have standing, a technicality. Can you imagine a system where a person in an election doesn't have standing? The President of the United States doesn't have standing.
Again, I have no idea what Trump is trying to say here, but I think he is trying to say that it would be shocking if the President of the United States wasn't always credible, because I think he is trying to use standing in that way. And it is. POTUS 45 and now POTUS 47 is a person who tried to cover up his affair with a porn star by bribing her to stay quiet. He's a person whose sexual allegations never end, which makes sense because he himself said,
You know, I'm automatically attracted to beautiful. I just start kissing them. It's like a magnet. You just kiss. I don't even wait. And when you're a star, they let you do it. You can do anything.
Whatever you want.
Grab them by the pussy. I can do anything.
even if the sexual allegations are false, he does proudly portray himself in a way that does make him look like someone who would do these things. He does portray himself in a way that doesn't make him look like the cleanest person, and in a way that you can't always trust him to have standing. And by the way, yes, I know there are people out there who do portray themselves in a stupid way as a joke, like Aaron Hansen does in the Starbomb songs about him wanting to have sex with non-human characters. But there's a difference between those jokes and the jokes Donald Trump does. Hansen is joking about fictional characters, whereas Trump is even bringing up his own daughter as someone he would date.
That's how we lost. If you look at the facts, and I'd love to have you'll do a special on it. I'll show you Georgia, and I'll show you Wisconsin, and I'll show you Pennsylvania, and I'll show you. We have so many facts and statistics, but you know what? That doesn't matter.
That's true. Your evidence really doesn't matter if all of your cases were rejected, because that shows your evidence really isn't that strong and that you don't really have standing.
Because we have to solve the problem that we have right now. That's old news. And the problem that we have right now is we have a nation in decline, and they have put it into decline. We have a nation that is dying, David.
Our nation is dying. That's true. And that's largely to do with the division you've spread. Every losing presidential candidate in recent years have been able to peacefully concede. Heck, since the debate is between you and Kamala Harris, I'll use her as an example. Kamala Harris conceded even before all the electoral votes were accounted for, because you already won by having 270 plus electoral votes. If she wanted, she could have complained about the election being rigged, like you did when you lost in 2020. However, that would have sparked a lot of unnecessary conflict between both sides, and would have fueled division. So, she didn't do that. It's different with you though, and was so much conflict between MAGA and literally everyone else, because you wanted to win so badly to the point you had hurt our nation. Our nation has been losing unity, Trump, and you're right, it is dying. But that's because of you and your disregard for our democratic union. In fact, I'll add on a bit regarding the division. I've never seen any major political group in this country as toxic and delusional as MAGA. When Kamala Harris conceded peacefully, Ben Shapiro uploaded a video poking fun of it to distract people from the idea that, wait, she actually conceded peacefully, unlike Trump. And the comment section was so toxic. Now, before I go into that comment section, I want to talk about Ben Shapiro's video over the second assassination attempt. I remember there was a reply I made on a Ben Shapiro video to a screaming Trump fan, asking him if he's angry over the fact that there was a non-MAGA person breaking the echo chamber by saying MAGA also has some problems, or if there was something else, and that comment got blocked, even though the only offensive term I said was echo chamber, leaving the other comment I left to that guy asking what was up with the name calling. So much for the free speech Ben Shapiro keeps ranting about, while supporting a guy who countlessly threatened strengthening libel laws to people who speak out against him. However, while my comments on echo chambers got blocked, these people's comments yelling out, "Shit, bullshit, shit," are fine. Probably because it's supporting the echo chamber Ben Shapiro himself agrees with. But seriously, what the hell? Calling her all these things is fine, and is protected by free speech. But leftists making fair comparisons between Trump and Hitler's rise of power is disgusting, and has caused the assassination attempts. When you think that X caused Y, you have to show how it was X that was a significant change compared to how it was like before, and how the significant change caused Y to happen. For example, let's use the hate the Haiti people in Springfield were getting after this debate. I think Trump's rhetoric about the Haiti people in Springfield being illegal immigrants who were taking other people's pets and were eating them caused fear among pet owners and led to more discrimination against them. However, I don't believe that for no reason. The reason why I believe that is because the connection has evidence, as there was a huge rise in discrimination against Haiti people in the week that followed the debate. And you can tell it was because of Trump's comments, because that was the major change from before. It's clear Trump's comments have actually fueled division, unlike comments about Trump's rise of power being similar to Hitler, causing the 2 assassination attempts against him. Both of these attempts happened this year, yet comments about Trump's rise of power being similar to Hitler have been there for a while. So what has changed? By the way, for more information about the eerie similarities between Trump and Hitler's rise of power, check out Michael Moore's Fahrenheit 11/9 after this video. It's an awesome documentary and it has a lot of good content in it. Anyways, let's talk about a connection between the 2 attempts. I'll tell you what has changed. Our nation is much more divided than it was before, and that's because of the hateful attitude Trump has been promoting.
I think Islam hates us.
You know, now a murderer, I believe this, it's in their genes. And we got a lot of bad genes in our country right now.
They're bringing drugs, they're bringing crime, they're rapists, and some, I assume, are good people.
The point is, our nation is dying, and it's largely because of you. By the time the 2024 election was coming out, this country was too divided, and people were resorting to assassinations.
Mr. President, thank you. Vice President Harris, you heard the president there tonight. He said he didn't say that he lost by a whisker. So he still believes he did not lose the election that was won by President Biden and yourself. But I do want to ask you about something that's come up in the last couple of days. This was a post from President Trump about this upcoming election just weeks away. He said, "When I win, those people who cheated," and then he lists donors, voters, election officials, he says will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law, which will include long-term prison sentences. One of your campaign's top lawyers responded saying, "We won't let Donald Trump intimidate us. We won't let him suppress the vote." Is that what you believe he's trying to do here?
A lot of MAGA thinks the debate was rigged because of things like this. But like we just saw in the beginning of the video, the moderators are being tough on both candidates. And it's just that personal biases make it feel like it was rigged against your preferred candidate, and that your preferred candidate should be treated with the uttermost respect. Even though if your preferred candidate is Trump, he has unashamedly shown massive disrespect towards women. However, I do want to talk about Trump's idea of cheating, considering how one of his buddies, Elon Musk, has been hosting questionable giveaways to promote Trump's stance and has been donating, as Trump likes to say, millions and millions of dollars to Trump's super PAC. In fact, since we are on the topic of Elon Musk and Donald Trump's relationship, remember, find someone who looks at you the same way Musk looks at Trump. In fact, I would play Careless Whisper right now, but I'm not like Trump, who is illegally synchronizing songs for his campaign ads from artists who have shown clear displeasure in Trump doing that. Anyways, what was I going to say? Oh right, abusing government powers to prosecute political opponents under the excuse they were cheaters. Yeah, like you said in part 1, we could become a Venezuela on steroids, should the wrong person become president. And I think you might be the one to fulfill that prophecy.
Donald Trump was fired by 81 million people.
Damn! See that, Trump? She didn't have to call you names to destroy you, and she didn't have to bring up other family members to make herself feel better. Maybe you should try to do the same.
So let's be clear about that, and clearly he is having a very difficult time processing that.
Come on, Harris. Give the old man a break. He's 78. By the time he leaves office, he'll be older than Biden right now. I mean, so many people were supporting Trump over Biden earlier this year simply because Trump is younger and has a better chance of making it through 4 more years as president. But now it's between you and him. And you're clearly going to have a better chance of going through a term than him. So come on. Play it easy on him. He's obviously going to have a lot of processing issues because he's not that fit to be president. I mean, at least you understood you lost when you saw that how he got 270 plus electoral votes. You were able to process it quickly. It's been 4 years and he's still having trouble processing it. And by the way, I know that Trump sounds much younger than Biden right now, but remember, 4 years ago, Biden had so much energy that he destroyed Trump to the point that Trump incited an insurrection. Trust me, just like Biden over the last 4 years, Trump is going to be aging a lot over the next 4 years.
But we cannot afford to have a president of the United States who attempts, as he did in the past, to upend the will of the voters in a free and fair election.
By the way, one of the biggest reasons why Harris lost was because they've been focusing so much on a peaceful transition of power. They knew that if they won, Trump would incite violence again and put our people and democracy in danger. So that's why they've been putting so much focus on being able to shut off Trump's false claims should he win. Harris and her team has been doing so much work on making sure there's a peaceful transfer of power should she win that she hasn't been able to put as much work as she could into making sure she wins in the first place. And this is because Trump made this an issue in the first place.
And I'm going to tell you that I have traveled the world as Vice President of the United States, and world leaders are laughing at Donald Trump.
It's not just the world leaders that are going to be laughing now that Trump is president, but people around the world in general. There are so many good Republicans out there, such as Ryan Binkley, Mitt Romney, Adam Kinzinger, and a convicted felon who has undermined our democracy in the past becomes the Republican Party's nominee. Not only that, but he becomes president again. Trump has even called for the suspension of our Constitution, and we elect him again. Yes, you can imagine the insane amounts of people who are laughing at the US for electing its own Hitler. I will never forget that time when 52% of Republicans said that they're okay with postponing the 2020 election if Trump proposed it. Our democracy is fragile, and Trump has been shaking those pillars that keep it together.
I have talked with military leaders, some of whom worked with you, and they say you're a disgrace.
I mean, he has insulted our own military members. No wonder why military leaders find him a disgrace. And in general, his disregard for our rule of law really makes him unlikable amongst actual patriots. Excuse me, MAGA, but as it turns out, going around wearing red caps and screaming about gun rights isn't patriotism. We get at you like the Second Amendment, but that isn't patriotism. You know what is patriotism? Keeping a rule of law together that Trump is failing to do.
And when you then talk in this way in a presidential debate and deny what over and over again are court cases you have lost because you did in fact lose that election, it leads one to believe that perhaps we do not have in the candidate to my right the temperament or the ability to not be confused about fact. That's deeply troubling, and the American people deserve better.
Harris is right. The American people deserve someone better, and women in particular deserve someone who actually respects them. Someone who would not cheat on their wife for a porn star. Someone who would not go around talking about how he would date his daughter if it weren't for the fact she was his daughter. Someone who would not make jokes around 10-year-olds about how he might date them in 10 years. Someone who doesn't go around talking about where to grab women from. Someone who actually respects women. Someone who also respects their right to choose and could clearly tell them whether or not they'd sign a national abortion ban because they deserve to know that much. Oh crap, it looks like I'm being like Trump and is going back to a topic that was already discussed in part 1 during the actual part. Immigration.
Let me just tell you about world leaders. Viktor Orban, one of the most respected men, they call him a strong man. He's a tough person, smart. Prime Minister of Hungary.
You respect a lot of world leaders, Trump, including Xi Jinping, for whom you congratulated on being president for life. So much for standing up to China when you're praising its authoritarian government. However, since we're on the topic of democracy, let's just take a look at Trump's whole quote.
He's now president for life. President for life. No, he's great. Hey, look, he was able to do that. I think it's great. Maybe we'll have to give that a shot someday.
And the majority of Republicans are actually okay with that too. You know what? Maybe a lot of the world isn't just laughing at our choice, but is also pitying us for repeating history.
Shut the fuck up! It's because of you and the media that people attempted to assassinate him! Okay, I do agree that those two that tried to kill him were triggered, but I still have the right to speak out against him. There's a difference between free speech and inciting violence! How is this considered inciting violence, whereas Trump's tweets during the Capitol riots are considered fine? All you do is cry about January 6th! There's nothing wrong with telling everyone to fight back! He knew what his rhetoric was doing and he continued to do it anyway. And you knew what your rhetoric was doing! Causing people to dislike Trump! Yeah, because he isn't a good person and I'm pointing it out. You have no right to compare him to Hitler! I'm confused. You guys are allowed to name call Kamala Harris all you want, calling her a psychopath and all that, and it will be protected by free speech. But if I point out the eerie similarities between Trump's rise of power to Hitler's, then I deserve to rot in hell? Because she is a psychopath! And Trump is the Hitler of America. Nobody supported Hitler! Yes, they did. How do you think he rose to power? Listen, the point is, Trump did not incite any violence on January 6th. However, your criticism of Trump did incite violence. First of all, you guys criticize Harris a lot, just as much as the left criticizes Trump. Why hasn't anyone attempted to assassinate her yet? I don't know. Maybe because this is Trump's third time being the presidential nominee, whereas this is only Harris's first time. He is more likely to get an attempt on his life at some point. But the point is, presidential nominees don't tend to get an attempt on their life, regardless of the amount of hate around them, though death threats are a common trend amongst all presidential candidates. However, there's nothing wrong with constructive criticism. Jordan Peterson is a conservative who tends to do good constructive criticism. And Trump was being constructive! Crying about the election being rigged against you, despite all your proof being debunked, isn't exactly constructive. But Trump did not incite any violence! Yes, he did. He'd have to have dementia if he didn't realize that his tweets were encouraging his followers to overturn the election. Trump didn't care and he kept tweeting anyways, telling his followers how much of a disgrace Mike Pence was to certified election results, even though he knew his supporters were going after him. Listen, there was no violence on January 6th in the first place. Huh? They were just peacefully protesting. Want me to show you the clips? Sure. Must be AI. AI hasn't gotten that advanced. Well, this footage has been uploaded for political reasons. What? It's all biased. That doesn't change the facts. These people were storming into the Capitol. You know what? It's impossible to debate with you martyrs, but all you do is shut down my free speech. I'm letting you talk right now. But you are letting me use my Second Amendment rights to fully protect my First Amendment rights. Hold up, Self. I think this character is going too far. No an actual Trump supporter would say that. Elon Musk said it, you bitch! He said that? Yes! How dare you try to erase that lie from me? Whoa, whoa, whoa. I just wanted to make sure you were accurate to what MAGA says because I didn't want this to become a straw man.
Shut up! You know what? For bringing my energy chamber, take a bite of this!
A bite of whoa, no, no, no!
Okay, so Sherry isn't feeling good after getting shot for the second time, so I'll take care of this for now.
They said, why is the whole world blowing up? 3 years ago it wasn't. Why is it blowing up? He said, because you need Trump back as president. They were afraid of him. China was afraid, and I don't like to use the word afraid, but I'm just quoting him. China was afraid of him. North Korea was afraid of him. Look at what's going on with North Korea, by the way. He said Russia was afraid of him.
Shadia, stop controlling me and deal with this yourself. I know you're injured from getting shot in the sack, but I don't know what in the world this is supposed to mean. I'm a stuffed animal. I don't do politics.
Okay, fine, Boy Teddy.
Well, that's it for the edited portion of the debate analysis. I also had another portion of the video that I was in the middle of writing and didn't get the chance to record and edit before I got burnt out. Here it is right now. Of course, changes were going to be made to the writing as I record and edit, as I confirm the facts and try to make my message as accurate and clear as possible, but this was the skeleton of what the next segments of this video was supposed to look like. Now that you've seen both the edited and just the plain unfinished writing segment of that video, let's talk about why I spent hours upon hours on it, yet just couldn't bring it to the finishing line. First, I want to talk about the whole experience. Doing this debate analysis is a unique experience because all you're doing is responding or adding on. For things like a TV show video essay, yes, the TV show is the foundation of your video essay, but you have to come up with and build your own structure. You also start off with a completely empty document, and you have to make the whole video essay from scratch. With a response to the debate, I already had the whole debate transcript copy and pasted into the video script, and my job was to just make a response, one part of the debate at a time, whether it's a part of a sentence or a whole exchange between the two candidates. So it should be easier, right? And yes, it was easier in some ways. However, there is a challenge that comes with a video structured in the way I did it, and that is the fact that you have to respond to everything. With an ordinary video essay, you choose the topic or topics. Like, let's say you make a video essay on the Angry Birds movie. There are so many different topics to talk about in the movie, such as humor, character designs, voice acting, in-game mechanics, and more. But you get to choose which topics you talk about. For example, in my The Legend of Zelda TV show review, I mostly rated episodes based on how funny and memorable they were in general. I didn't have to talk about the art style, the voice acting, the in-game mechanics, and other elements of the show. I especially didn't have to respond and react to every single moment in the show. Making normal commentary videos is basically like a sandbox, where it does take a lot to build something from scratch, but you at least have the freedom. With a response for something as big as this, sure, you have the foundation already built for you, but now you don't have much freedom with how you build the rest. Yes, you can have a style and have your own arguments, but since the type of response I chose to make was a response in which I respond to everything that was said, so I wouldn't hear anything from conservatives that I ignored this or ignored that, that meant I had to respond to things I didn't really want to keep responding to. And since I include the full footage and audio of Trump and Harris talking in this debate, I also had to make sure that I was commenting longer than the actual original content, so I can really claim the content as my own, and I won't be some lame reactor who can't do fair use. So if there is some really stupid dragged out slop that I didn't want to respond to, I was obliged to make a response longer than the dragged out slop, which really pushed for my burnout. But we'll get more into why I couldn't continue later. Overall, the whole experience was unique, and it was a nice change in pace compared to the commentary videos I was used to. It was still dense in commentary, and provided plenty of satirical fun. Now, let's talk about why I couldn't continue, despite how well Part 1 came out, and how much more work I was putting into Part 2, and how it was coming out really well. Like I already said, the obligation to respond to literally everything was getting annoying and was burning me out, but I was still able to keep writing and editing. Really, what made me stop was the fact that there was no point. Making a response to a presidential debate when the corresponding election is already over just doesn't make sense. So then I changed the purpose of the debate to be about what Trump can do to improve. Of course, Inauguration Day came by, and Trump already was doing the exact opposite of what I was suggesting he could improve on. For example, I was giving advice on how he can be a leader in the fight against climate change and not only help save the world, but actually gain political gain. But immediately on day one, he takes the US out of the Paris Climate Accords. Of course, Trump would never listen to me in the first place, so it was just an excuse to finish the debate analysis I put so much work into from the very beginning. But maybe inside of me, there was an actual hope, a naive hope, but an actual hope that the Trump administration can do better. Of course, I think even the moderate conservatives would agree with me that Trump is doing much worse things in his second term than he did in his first term. Anyway, speaking of naive hope, the biggest reason why I couldn't continue with part 2 was because of the views. When you aren't getting any views for the huge investment you put into the video, it is kind of defeating. To do major videos like this, you need to be stubborn and refuse to give up on the video. And I was being very stubborn, and I wanted to see this through. But the obligation I ended up creating to respond to literally everything was getting annoying as the Ukraine segment dragged on. And we were getting closer to segments like racial politics, which I really didn't want to keep responding to. But I knew I would have to, or else conservatives would just say that I'm purposely trying to ignore the identity politics that make Kamala Harris, or that I'm purposely trying to ignore the woke agenda that Kamala Harris is trying to establish. But really, what I needed in order to finish part 2 was motivation. All I had was my stubbornness. And with part 1 not even reaching 50 views after what was at least 50 hours of work, and more importantly, nobody actually watching at least one section in its entirety, stubbornness was all I had in order to continue. And when you're sacrificing hours upon hours every day that could be used doing more practical things that everyone else is doing, that is setting up their success and is actually sponsored by their parents, like studying or participating in clubs and sports, to making an irrelevant video that nobody's going to watch, it's hard to keep that stubbornness. Hell, I remember in 8th grade how much time I would be spending on making scripts for things like the Vivek Ramaswamy response or the Zelda episode ranking, while all my friends were having fun, playing games right in front of me, and how that carried over in 9th grade with the ChatGPT and plagiarism video, and the response to the debate. And honestly, I don't regret it one bit. I do regret one thing, and that is abandoning this channel for so long. So, what do I want to do with this channel? Well, first of all, this channel was originally created for me to upload only my best commentary videos, with no pressure to upload every day, every week, every month, etc. I wanted to be able to work as long as I needed to on a video, and take my time, without being rushed. One of the biggest issues with the debate response was that there was a deadline before it would be irrelevant, aka Election Day. Now, when I'm a full-time YouTuber, I should really have no problem being able to get out that response in time. Both parts would have easily been finished in a couple of weeks, if I was working at least 8 hours a day. Of course, since I'm a high school student, I didn't have that much time to work on it. So yeah, choosing to do a video where I had limited days to finish it was a bad idea. That's why, from now on, I want to only make videos where I can take as long as I want. I was planning on making a video on the Ace Attorney movie, which is great, because I can take as long as I want in making that video, because the interest will not go away. People still talk about the movie, and especially the original games, and are interested in it. I was planning on making a video on Death Note, which is great, because I can take as long as I want in making that video, because the interest will not go away. People still talk about the anime and the manga to this day. And in terms of my political videos, yeah, I was planning on making a video on political reaction content, which is great, because I can take as long as I want in making that video, because that issue is not going away anytime soon, until somebody decides to legally sue someone for doing political react content that wasn't fair use, and make a legal precedent that you can't just play a political video and do chair reacts. Oh wait, Ethan Klein already started a lawsuit. Okay, maybe it is getting a little late. Whatever it is, I want to be able to make ageless videos that aren't going to lose their relevancy, and will still help the discourse no matter when it comes out. So yeah, I'm finally coming back to Deep Thoughts with Sharia, with video essays that I can take all the time I need, whether it takes days, weeks, or months, or even years. And when it comes out, I still think to myself, you know, I'm still on time. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time. Goodbye.